We have now started recording. Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Bel Air Business Association's first breakfast meeting we've had since the pandemic started, I believe. So it's not an ideal in-person situation, but at least we are together. It's nice to see everybody's faces, and hopefully we can start getting the word out and more people will participate in this. But it's important to us to try to get back to whatever normal is going to look like. It's not going to be what it was a year ago, so we'll have to figure it out as we go. But thank you guys all very much for joining in. Before we start the real program, I do want to take an opportunity to recognize our platinum members. So just I'll real quick mention the members. HEB, who is not with us this morning. Allegiance Bank would be Judy. Uptown Automotive, Zamir. Guarantee Bank and Trust, Hotel Island, Ferris Family Health, Vincatech One, SLS Properties, and Memorial Hermann Southwest. Those are our platinum members. So to those individuals in particular, we are very, very appreciative of your continued support for the organization. And then we also always like to acknowledge the gold members. I'm not going to try to mention all of them by name, but if we have any gold members, if you would raise your hand. Kathleen, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Appreciate your support. And then I do have one announcement to make. I was hoping that she would be able to join us, but she was not. But we have been able to hire an administrative assistant to support the BBA. Shatal Dewaldi has agreed to fill that role. And so she's going to be starting really soon to work with, hang on a second, guys, I got somebody wanting to come in, I believe. Yep, okay.
Hey, Lisa.
Hi,
Morning, Lisa.
Good morning. Morning.
Okay, sorry about that.
Sorry.
Lisa, thanks.
Sorry, good morning.
No problem. Just kind of have to check that every now and then, make sure I don't miss anybody. Oh yeah, so it's, the administrative assistant. So Shatal has agreed to join our organization. I will be getting with her. I will be getting with her in the next couple of days to kind of get her laid out. And then I just received a message. I'm going to apologize. Stephen Vaughn is also a platinum member. So Stephen, I apologize for missing you, and thank you very much for supporting our organization. That's one of the things that we're going to be looking for Shatal to do, is to keep me organized and make sure I don't miss somebody. Moving target. So anyway, okay. One of the things that we used to do when we had these meetings in person is offer sponsorship opportunities. We haven't really decided exactly what or how we're going to do that, but I'm just throwing it out there to let people think about it. If it is something you might be interested in, certainly would love to hear from you. So if you if you think there's an opportunity for you to do that, we are planning on continuing these breakfast meetings on a monthly basis now. They will be the second Thursday of each month. And Brooke has agreed to chair our event committee, and Brooke will be one that lines up our speakers. So, and I think I may have another person wanting to join. Bear with me. Okay. Okay, so does anybody have any other announcements they'd like to make, or any questions they'd like to ask of me before we jump into the program? Okay, well then, Brooke, where did you go? Brooke, if you don't mind introducing Breanna, and we'll have her go ahead and get started.
Okay, great. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, and before we start, Brooke, let me make one announcement. If I could have everybody just mute themselves so that we can avoid any background noise, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Okay, great. Before I introduce Breanna, I have heard her speak before, so she's very, very good. I think y'all are in for quite a treat here. As Jim said, we're doing this once a month. To the extent, if I know next month's speaker, I'll let you know. And I do know next month's speaker, Mike Shea with Braver Angels, which is a group that really just focuses not on any political side, red or blue. It just focuses on how we communicate with each other. It's a fascinating group, and he's actually a Houston native now. He works in Austin, but you talk about the times we're in. It's not which side you're on; it's how we communicate with each other. So bring a friend, bring yourself, obviously, bring a family member. It's really fascinating, their perspective on trying to get people just to improve our civic dialogue. So that's for next month. Breanna here today. Breanna Fetkavich serves as the director of outreach for Street Grace in Houston, which Street Grace is a wonderful organization. I think they're based in Atlanta. They've got a good presence here in Houston. Their primary, it's a faith-based organization that utilizes evidence-based demand reduction strategies to eradicate the commercial sexual exploitation of children through what they call it, I guess, the 4 Ps: the prevention and protection, policy, and pursuit. She'll talk more about that. Their board is just stellar, as well as their leadership, which Breanna is one of the members. Ernie Johnson is a national sportscaster, if y'all follow baseball or basketball, and he and his wife have been involved. His wife's, I think, an ambassador to the program, and they're just exceptional people. They've got like four adopted children, 2 of which came from very dire circumstances in third world countries. So they really practice what they preach as far as being faith-based in their leadership from A to Z. Anyhow, back to Breanna. She graduated magna cum laude in corporate communication from Olivet Nazarene University. She's always been passionate about human rights, especially pertaining to women and children. She served impoverished women and families at a crisis pregnancy center in her hometown in Southern Colorado. And she is certified by the Colorado Center for Relationship Education and passionately trained thousands of students in Southern Colorado public schools about healthy relationships and how to keep themselves safe from abuse. She also served as a missionary in Mozambique, Africa with Project Purpose International. She ran a center where women engaged in the sex trade could find women who engage in the sex trade could find resources, employment, a safe harbor for their children, and most importantly of all, hope. Okay. As far as upon returning back to the United States from Mozambique, she served 2 years as a residential care coach in a safe home for sex trafficking survivors. Too many S's there, excuse me. The safe home is part of Redeemed Care Ministries, a faith-centered organization that provides the highest quality of rehabilitative care and services for those who have been victimized by the commercial sex industry. So there's a lot to what she's done. I think at this point, she can tell you a lot more than I can. So Breanna, I'll pass it over to you.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. Well, it's a pleasure to be with you all today. And you're right. It seems like a good day not to have to drive anywhere. And so I'm thankful for Zoom this morning. And, you know, we're going to also be talking about our 3 Ps. I was laughing when y'all were talking about pets, people, and plants. So it seems like that's going to be kind of the theme of the conversation today. I am from Colorado originally. I'm not a native Houstonian or a native Texan. I've lived here for 4 years now. You know, embracing the fact that it rains in January instead of snows. All of the flooding and the humidity is really fun, a fun adjustment. But I love the work that we do at Street Grace. I stand behind our leadership and our mission because I just think it's a really, really innovative way to approach a problem that has been a problem for a very long time. And unfortunately, Houston is an epicenter of this problem. Although this is happening in every city across the United States, Houston is a very large city. Therefore, we have a lot of children being exploited. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. I think it's just kind of the best way for me to guide our conversation. So let me pull that up here. Move some things around so you can see me. Oh, that's the end. Let's start at the beginning. There we go. Fantastic. So it was already mentioned that Street Grace was founded in Atlanta, Georgia. We were founded out of some of the faith communities there who said, man, we have a really big problem happening in our city. Let's do something about it. And from there, we've grown to a national organization. We have offices in Texas. We've been here for just over 2 years. And we are also in California, Tennessee, and have recently expanded to do some work in Florida. And we were just doing some work on the Super Bowl. I'll explain that a little bit later. And so we've been able to take our message really across the nation. We've always used technology to make ourselves larger. We've been using Zoom way before Zoom was cool, because we recognize that this is a problem that many states don't have great organizations committed to fighting sexual exploitation, although it is happening there. And so that's something that in Houston, although we have a huge problem, we also have a lot of organizations that are working together collaboratively to fight this organization, because we realize there isn't a one-way street into trafficking, and there isn't a one-way street out. We need everybody to work together, and there are a lot of components of this, as you will see as we kind of dive in. Our mission is a pretty simple one. We want to demand an end to the commercial sexual exploitation of children, or CSEC, as you might hear me abbreviate it. And that's a pretty lengthy definition. I'm going to dive into exactly what that is, but that's child sex trafficking, child sexual exploitation. And, our vision goes along with that. We just want to live in a world where all children are free from sexual exploitation. And my personal vision is to live in a city of Houston where everybody that lives here realizes that our vision is not yet a reality, because we have to have understanding of what's going on before we're able to jump in and help with a problem. If we don't have any idea at the scope of the problem or what is going on, then we're not going to be able to do anything about it. So that's part of the work that we do at Street Grace, is educating the community and equipping them to take action. We never educate without action, because we realize that sensationalism and making people emotional about this big, serious issue doesn't really move people to action. Practical steps to do. And so that's what we're all about. I get a lot of questions about how CSEC fits in with human trafficking and other types of, sex crimes and exploitation. And so I just created this handy dandy little chart, because I just thought that it explained the issue well. Human trafficking is the larger umbrella term. Human trafficking covers a lot of things: labor trafficking, sex trafficking. It even covers organ trafficking. Thankfully, that's not something we have to deal with very often in our country, so I excluded it from this chart. But this involves men, women, children, people in other countries, and people here in our country and right here at home. This is kind of the all-encompassing term. And we have all forms of human trafficking here in our city. And then we have underneath that, we have labor trafficking and sex trafficking. And this can get a little confusing, because sometimes labor trafficking blurs over into sex trafficking and vice versa. But the primary definition and the distinction between the two is to be a victim of labor trafficking. You are somebody that is either a victim of force, fraud, or coercion when it comes to your work. So not being paid fairly, not being paid fair at all, or not being paid at all, working in unsafe conditions, maybe being abused in the workplace, or having come to our country under false pretense of a job you're doing. Now you're doing something else. We see this a lot in the illicit massage industry. We have over 600 storefront businesses masquerading as Asian foot massage, reflexology, Thai massage, you name it. They all look the same. They all have curtains in the windows, neon signs, and something to do with Asia and massage, and they're cheaper than Massage or Massage Envy or those legitimate places. They're always in strip centers. Those places are running, yes, a legitimate massage or reflexology business, but they're also running a backdoor brothel and committing a lot of other crimes, money laundering. Those are very organized crime networks. And so we see labor trafficking and sex trafficking kind of combined there. Women from Asia are brought here under false pretense that they'll be working as a waitress or in a hotel. They end up working in a massage parlor and then working as a sex slave as well. And so labor trafficking has to do with work. Sex trafficking, we have adult sex trafficking, and we have the commercial sexual exploitation of children. Now, what is the difference between an adult sex trafficking victim and a sex worker or a prostitute? This is a big question. We have a lot of strip clubs in our city. Houston is known for one of the only places in the nation where you can still go buy a prostitute on the street, on the Bissonnette track, or in 1960. And so it gets a little complicated. Well, the difference is similar to labor trafficking. An adult victim of sex trafficking is somebody who has been a victim of one of these three things. Not all three, just one. Force, which is what most of us think of, but it's usually not force. Fraud, common. happens a lot with labor trafficking. And most commonly it's coercion, which is very, very difficult to prove, but that's usually what's going on. Usually these women are being manipulated and groomed, and they're victims of blackmail and extortion and control and all kinds of things that's not easy to see with the naked eye. And so many of us think that, oh, all of these women out here or at the strip club or on these escort websites, they just chose this life of being a sex worker. The vast majority of the time, that's not true. And the reason that we don't know about it is because these victims rarely ever self-report, and they don't even know that what's happening to them has language. Many of them don't have any idea that there's over 40 organizations in our city committed to helping them. And so we have adult sex trafficking. Now, when it comes to kids in the state of Texas, there is no such thing as a child prostitute. And we've moved to this language in almost all 50 states at this point, where law enforcement officers are no longer arresting children and charging them for prostitution. We're recognizing that a child cannot consent to a sex act. And so any commercial sex act with a child is by definition sex trafficking. Now, what is the definition here? So this is any sexual activity. Now, keep in mind, this is not just a person-to-person, in-person interaction with a child. This could be a photo that is exchanged that is sexual in nature. This could be an online sexual encounter over a webcam. This is still considered sexual exploitation and sex trafficking with a minor for which something of value is given or promised. They don't have to make good on their promise in order for it to be exploitation. So yes, sometimes that child has been recruited online. They've built relationship with someone. They've gotten to a relationship. That person has convinced them. They've been sexual in the relationship. And now they've manipulated and coerced them into doing sexual things with others in exchange for money that that person, the trafficker, is keeping. Yes, that is sometimes what happens. And it looks just like that. Sometimes it's a little different than you think. Sometimes it's a minor who has run away. We see this a lot in kids that are involved in CPS and in foster care. They've run away and they're exchanging sex to survive. They're exchanging sex for a place to stay, something to eat. This could be kids in foster care who they haven't run away, but they're going to school. They live at a residential treatment center, which, by the way, those places are like jail. I mentor a lot of kids that live there. And to get out of their circumstances, after school, they hate the food there. They feel like nobody cares about them anyway. They have a lot of emotional damage and probably abuse in their past. They're exchanging it for a new pair of Nike shoes. They're exchanging sex for a trip to the nail salon. And they're exchanging sex for substances. This is a tactic of a predator in order to get somebody hooked on this so that they can be used for sex. And sometimes they're exchanging a photo, a video, a sex act in exchange for something you can't touch or even really see. This is online currency. And I'm not talking about cryptocurrency. These kids are not investing. I'm talking about things like online currency in a video game, which is how the world works with the games of online video games. You exchange online currency in order to get more things in the game. And so a ton of that is happening, especially to our young boys. So what does our problem look like? Many people, when they become aware of this issue, they think that, this is all about rescuing kids that have been trafficked and they've been kidnapped and then they've been trafficked. Now, let me make this clear. Most children that have been kidnapped are sexually abused or exploited at some point. That is almost always part of their story. But not every kid that is sexually abused or exploited is kidnapped, especially in our city. Look at these numbers. We don't have this many missing kids, 314,000, and these are modest estimations. These numbers come from a UT Austin study that came out a few years ago. It's some of the most reputable data we have for our state, where they studied a number of big cities and small towns in Texas. And they found that out of those 314,000 victims, roughly, almost 80,000 of those are youth. If you were to take 80,000 youth and put them into school buses, and you line them up end to end to end, you would get roughly 2,000 school buses full of kids that are recognized victims of human trafficking. That is not accounting for all of the children that these things have happened to them in person or online that they've never told anyone, which is a huge portion of them. And I know that because I've worked with adult survivors who were victimized for the first time at 13 or 14, which is the average age. And they never told anyone. And they probably never will, other than people that work with them in their restorative care program, if they make it there, which is a small percentage of victims. And then of those, 60% of those victims come from the child welfare system. And so that's not all of them. All children are vulnerable, but that is a big problem, and that is really focused on a specific group of our kids that are really vulnerable. I got muted somehow. Sorry about that. 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys. That might surprise you. That's not too far behind. Most people think this is just an issue that happens to young girls. Will be sexually exploited in the state of Texas before their 18th birthday. And that's a number at Street Grace that we are not okay with. And it's a number that we want to tell people that is happening and that is reality, and something that they can do something about to reduce these numbers. I like to think of sex trafficking as being like a river. As being a Colorado mountain girl, a lot of my analogies have to do with the mountains and nature, but I don't know if you've ever seen the headwaters of a river, but they're small. It's a small little trickle that just comes out of the side of a mountain. It's very unimposing. If you were hiking and you didn't know what to look for, you would definitely miss it. And if you wanted to divert that water or harness its power or bottle it up, it's pretty easy to do. There's not a lot of force. It's all in one centralized location. But as that headwater grows, moves down the mountain, it gains size, it gains speed, it branches off into different directions. Sometimes it's harnessed in reservoirs, which can create an immense amount of energy and power, and sometimes goes down all the way into the ocean. And so I ask you, what's easier to contain, move, or change? The Rio Grande River or the headwaters? Well, of course, the headwaters. And historically, as a nation, although human trafficking has been going on for 100 years or more, this is just now a new issue that people are now recognizing. We now have language. We now have a little bit of legislation. We now have a little bit of government and federal funding. We have some law enforcement collaboration. We have some prosecutors working with us. Faith-based organizations, we're understanding this. We're getting the information out to the community. We saw this just this year in 2020. We had a number of things out in the public eye about Jeffrey Epstein and things like Wayfair scandal and Pizzagate and QAnon and all of these things, which bring about a little bit of awareness, whether they're true, or not. We're at least talking about the issue. But historically, we've spent all of our time and money, we've put all of our eggs in the basket of restoration, which is the end of the river. We're providing services for people that are being victimized. We're providing legislation to help people that have been victimized. We're providing government funding and private grants to people that have been victimized. That's important. That's what I've been doing prior to doing my work at Street Grace for 6 or 7 years, internationally and here. I see the value in that. There are not enough safe houses. There are not enough programs. There's not enough money. But Texas spent $6.5 billion last year on restorative care for human trafficking survivors. Where's the fruit of that? And so we recognize that if we were to spend $6.5 billion in prevention, education, and demand reduction, we would see a massive shift. Because while that work is important, it never ends trafficking. It follows the problem around. And so we have to take an upriver approach. What does that look like? Well, where'd my upriver approach slide go? It didn't make it in. There it is. I skipped it somehow. This is what we take as the upriver approach. Remember I mentioned the 3 Ps, not pets, people, and can't remember the other one. Pots. No. Don't know. Plumbing. And so this is our 3 Ps. Prevention and protection, which now have actually been split to 2 in some of our markets where we provide care and a hotline for rescued children. Not yet here in Texas. That's more of our Georgia focus with another partner we have. But we do prevention and protection, policy, and pursuit. Now, what does that mean? Prevention and protection. We go into places where students are. We're talking about being a child-focused organization And we want to equip those that are being victimized with the tools that they need before they're ever in a place of exploitation, so that they can recognize how they can keep themselves safe and their friends safe before harm comes to them. And so instead of people saying, well, this has never been a problem in our suburb or our, country church, let's make sure this never happens in the first place. We don't want children to have to be victimized in order for us to start doing things about it. And so we have lots of ways that we engage with students in schools. We do trainings in churches, for law enforcement, for businesses, for groups just like you all. We're doing, a small version of that prevention programming. We have specific programming for parents called Keeping Kids Safe in the Digital Age, equipping them to have difficult conversations with their kids about social media and online dating and gaming and sexting and pornography and all of these peripheral things, healthy relationships, boundaries, communication that play into somebody becoming a victim of this. We have policy, which we're knee deep in this right now. In Texas is a unique place because you only meet in the legislative session every other year. So we have a lot to accomplish every other year. And we are, currently navigating the difficulties of COVID. We would typically be at the Capitol right now, handing out some of our policy agendas, but we equip the community to get help us with that. So if you're interested in that, it's really, really easy, and everybody has a voice to be able to find the person that represents you, to send them an email, write them a letter, or make a phone call about some things that are really important. One of those that we got passed just last session was a House Bill 403, that requires Texas superintendents to provide training to their staff and board about human trafficking in public schools, which has been influential in helping us with our prevention piece. We also have expanded the laws so that people who have been victimized by human trafficking can get non-disclosures on their criminal history, since most of them were manipulated, forced, or coerced into committing these crimes, so that they can truly get a fresh start at life. And that fits into our protection piece. And so they're all holistic. They all connect together. And then lastly, we have pursuit. Now, if you're justice oriented, this might appeal to you. This is a really, really cool way that I said we've been using technology to make ourselves larger. So we have an artificially intelligent chatbot called Gracie. Gracie has similar technology to Siri in your phone or Alexa. And so what happens is she posts ads for us, decoy ads, fake ads on escort websites. You may or may not know there's about 15 or so escort websites in our city where you can buy sex and set up a meeting with somebody to buy sex in a quicker amount of time than it takes you to buy or order a pizza from Domino's. And a lot of those people on those escort websites are minors. And so what happens is this buyer is scrolling through. He clicks on one of these advertisements, and it happens to be one of our ads placed by Gracie. She can manifest herself in 180 unique ways. She can be a 15-year-old girl, an African-American girl in Dallas, while a 12-year-old Asian girl in Houston. And in 15 cities across the United States, we have ads running 24/7 when we're sleeping and when we're out of the office and on holidays and nights and weekends, reducing demand. So this person's chatting with this young girl that he thinks, but it's really a technology, saying, hey, where are we going to meet? What's it going to cost? What are we going to do? She's asking for photos, and this is all being recorded in a permanent file. And then she's going to send out a message that says, hey, this isn't who you think you're talking to. What you're doing is actually a felony in all 50 states, punishable by up to $100,000 in fines and 40 years in federal prison. Your name, your phone number, this conversation, and all those pictures you sent are now in a permanent file accessible to state, local, and federal law enforcement. And sometimes we work with those law enforcement partners in order to make their arrests way more effective than them doing this by hand. Gracie can chat simultaneously with 10,000 people. We placed two ads of minors that were being solicited or being offered for sex in Tampa the week of the Super Bowl. In 3 days, we had over 3,000 conversations with just those two ads. And so we sent out a lot of demand reduction operation text messages, and we worked with law enforcement to do some arrests. But we don't stop there. People that get that message also get a second message a couple hours later. This one is a message that's really a message of hope. This is providing them to a private website that we've created with resources in all 50 states, so it doesn't matter where they are, where they can get help, where they can get meaningful resources for counseling, for addiction recovery groups, for accountability, and for resources to deal with their porn or sex addiction that got them to that place in the first place before they end up getting arrested and into a life of cyclical destruction. Gracie's been a part of over 300,000 text exchanges just in 2 years. So that's over 300,000 children that have not been attacked by a real predator. So we have to understand that human trafficking is a business. It's the second largest illegal business on the planet, second only to drug trafficking, and very quickly going to become number one over drug trafficking. Because you can sell a drug only once. You can sell a child over and over and over. And unfortunately, the laws in Texas, which we're working on, by the way, are not strong enough to deter somebody from being a sex trafficker or a sex buyer. And the laws are a lot stronger when it comes to prosecution of people buying and selling drugs. And so it's a lot more lucrative and a lot less risky to traffic kids. The supply exploited people is children. 75% of kids in the Houston area that are sexually exploited were first approached by a predator on social media or the internet. So the safest place for your kid is no longer at home. It's one of the most dangerous places, especially alone in their bedroom with their device, especially distance learning from school, alone with their device without any education. And then we have demand, the buyers. These are the people that drive this thing. Without demand, we don't have a problem. Many people think that we have a huge human trafficking problem because we're international. We have seaports, we have airports, we have freeways. Yes, that all contributes, but the number one reason is this. Men in Texas buy sex, 10% of them. And I say men not because I'm being nasty or prejudiced. That's what the data tells us. You want to know what the average buyer looks like? He looks like this. He doesn't look what you think. He doesn't look like what you picture a pedophile. The average buyer actually is a middle-aged married man, white, who makes between $100,000 and $300,000 a year and has children. Probably not what you thought. Without these people, we don't have a problem. That's why we send that message to them in order to get help. That's why we talk to little boys in school about relationships and about the dangers of pornography. And that's why we spread information to adults about the dangers of pornography, which drives this industry, because that's the number one thing that creates demand. Let's talk about pornography for a second, because we have to not just take a narrow focus and look at either supply, our victims, or demand, or the traffickers. We have to look at all three of those. That's why we educate children, we educate parents. We use Gracie to reduce demand, and we educate people about the dangers of pornography. And then the traffickers fit in through some of our community programs, some of our leadership opportunities in our clubs at schools, where we're developing things that teach people about some of those deeper issues, because what's behind the brain of a trafficker is difficult to understand. Traffickers, pimps, can be women. They're often women. They can be young girls. They can be married couples. They can be family members that are trafficking kids. And so it's not that simple. It's a lot simpler to reduce demand and supply. The trafficker issue involves a lot more collaboration with partners in the community, because there's a lot of reasons that drive somebody to become a trafficker. Their own abuse, lack of resources, poverty, all of these bigger issues that we work together to address. And before I leave you with what you can do, I want to talk a little bit about pornography, because we can't have a conversation about human trafficking without having a conversation about pornography. And a lot of people don't realize that. This is what drives the demand. Members of our community are not kidnapping and rescuing, and taking kids over the border to Mexico. Yeah, that's happening. But I'm saying members of our community are buying and selling our children because of this. This is a progression of an addiction. Yes, pornography is addictive. We know this. The science tells us the exact same pleasure center of the brain is activated. The same one when you drink alcohol, smoke tobacco, eat sugar, exercise, all of these things that can traditionally be addictive. It might surprise you that the largest users, the largest consumers, viewers of internet porn are children. Girls, yeah, shocker, girls and boys aged 12 to 17 years old. And children are exposed to pornography for the first time at 8 or 9 years old. Yet parents are waiting until high school to talk to them about pornography, or they're never talking to them at all. Research tells us that the vast majority of kids are not learning about sex from their parents. They're learning about sex from pornography. And that creates devastation in our community. Because a child that learns about sex from pornography, a young girl that learns about sex from pornography, she learns that violence that she's seeing, which pornography really is gender-based violence. 88% of pornography is violent specifically toward women. And so that young girl that watches pornography, she's more likely to be sexually assaulted or abused than a girl that doesn't, because that has been normalized for her. She knows nothing about sex and relationships, and she thinks that this is how she's supposed to be treated in a relationship. And look at this, 18-year-old boys that consume pornography frequently were significantly more likely to have sold, interesting, become a trafficker, or bought sex than boys of the same age. We know that when we go out with partners and we do arrests of men who are buying sex, it started with pornography, which many people think is harmless. And unfortunately, despite the trauma it can happen to a child when their brain is exposed to pornography before they're developmentally able, it skews their views of relationships. And what about the adult consumer? Well, the adult consumer may unknowingly be contributing to the sex industry, because you may be thinking, well, I'm not paying for this. I'm not putting any money into this. And these people are adults who are willing, porn actors. No, not true. Not all of them. A huge portion of people that are watching or creating pornography, they're victims of human trafficking. They're victims of force, fraud, and coercion. On the other side, they're being horrifically abused, manipulated, or coerced. In addition to that, how do you think porn companies make their money? It's all free now. You don't have to buy magazines or rent things on HBO. They make money from ads. And so by watching pornography, you are putting money into the porn industry's pocket. And if the largest searched for query is teen porn, by the way, so most people, when you can search for what you want, teen is the #1 hit. Think about those principles of supply and demand. If there's more demand for teen porn, that means more people are going to go online, make relationship with our kids, groom them through social media, games, all these places they're spending a ton of time right now due to COVID, and convince them, manipulate them, coerce them, extort them into sending their photos to them. And this is happening all day, every day to meet that demand. So watching pornography is not harmless. You're contributing to the sex industry. And we have resources for children and adults on how to quit watching porn for good, because it's not easy. I skipped a bunch of things and talked about all this. Here's the human trafficking hotline number. I encourage you to keep this, to write it down. You can send a text, make a tip anytime, anywhere. If you see something strange, you know somebody that might be in trouble, make the call, send the text. You can find this, just a quick Google, you'll get to this. It's based in Washington, D.C. by an organization called the Polaris Project. Now, what can you do? Well, share something you learned today. I know this was just a crash course, but the way that this thing loses its power is we start talking about it. We bring what has been in the darkness out into the light. Secondly, follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and we actually have a TikTok, which I'm sure many of you are not using TikTok, but if you maybe have a child or a grandchild, have them follow us on TikTok, because there's a lot of junk out there, a lot of sexualized content, a lot of lies, and we want to infuse some truth. And by following us, you can spread the message to people that maybe don't know what's going on in our city. Thirdly, donate. We're a nonprofit. The reason that we can provide all this training to schools at no cost, this $1 million worth of technology to law enforcement at no cost, is because of people that support us. And we'd love for you to be a monthly donor if that's something that moves you. Download and share our resources. On our website, streetgrace.org, we have a ton of videos, conversation starters, resource cards. We have a handbook that you can download, all kinds of things that you can share and use. And lastly, be a liaison. If you'd like to hear one of our full trainings for parents, for businesses, for schools, connect us with your child or your grandchildren's school, connect us with your church. We would love to come and spread the message to somebody that you are connected with, because everybody knows somebody that they can share this with, and everybody has a platform. Everybody's connected to some type of community. And so please reach out to me. And this is my contact information. So feel free to write it down, take a screenshot, whatever you'd like to do. And I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to, if you have feedback from the presentation, questions, concerns, if you'd like to connect us with a school, a church, a business, any place like that, a legislator, if you know one, that would be fantastic. So thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to connecting with you.
Breanna, thank you very much. Bear with me, I'll get my screen back, just went away. Thank you very much. We are a small enough group that if anybody has questions, I'm not going to force you to put it in the chat. feel free to just unmute yourself and ask a question if you've got any for Breanna.
Yes.
I have a question. We talk about this, but what has been done to the buyers, the people that are like prostitution, the people that are buying this, do they get in trouble?
Yeah, so historically, no, not at all.
I know it. And see, to me, if they got in trouble, that would stop the demand.
You're right, Judy. That is exactly right. So we last legislative session were able to get sex buying moved up from your second offense is now a state jail felony. This year in session, we are pushing for legislation to make your first offense a state jail felony. So that is something that will reduce demand, because if there are real consequences for buying sex, people are going to stop buying sex. It's a lot more.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is a huge focus on what we do. So not only do we work on strengthening the laws to deter these buyers so they do get in trouble, we work with law enforcement to use our Gracie technology, our chatbot, so that when they're doing arrests, which they do undercover operations, they post fake ads, they have a bunch of guys come to a hotel, but it's just not, it's not a good use of resources because they can only get a few. They're doing individual conversations with people, whereas the chatbot can chat with 10,000 people. So that's a way that we're reducing demand and getting these buyers to have some consequences for their actions. And then we hook them up with programs like long-term buyer intervention programs where they learn about what they're doing and how it contributes to the sex industry, because many of them don't know. They don't know the consequences for their actions. They just think this is an adult buying another adult. Or when it's a child, they claim they didn't know it was a child. And then we're also teaching children about things like healthy relationships, because every sex buyer at one time was a child. And so we're helping to shape and make lasting community change about, respect and relationships and what's okay in a sexual encounter, and that buying sex is not okay. So that's what we're doing. And you're absolutely right. That is a huge focus of our organization, is because we recognize if we remove that component, the demand component from the business model, the whole thing crashes. And so that's our focus.
And do y'all work with Ashton Kutcher any?
Yeah, so he has a great organization called Thorn. He's a friend, and we have, we're very connected with them. We don't collaborate together, but we're on a lot of the same conversations, and they do work with technology, so that's why we kind of run in the same vein. And
yeah, I met him, and you think he's just a crazy actor or something. He is brilliant.
Yeah, that's cool to get the opportunity to meet him.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Breanna? So I'm going to encourage everybody. Hopefully this was beneficial, great information. I think this is something that, at least for me personally, you hear about it on the periphery, but we really don't understand the nature and the gravity of the situation. And to me, the reason that's so important is if we feel that way, other people feel that way also. And so one of the best things we can do to help Breanna get this word out is to get her connected with other people. If there are other organizations that you're members of that you think could benefit from this message, let them know about Breanna. Getting the word out about this, the more people that become aware of it, the more people get involved, and the better odds we have of trying to solve this problem. So I encourage you to reach out to Breanna. She put her information in the chat, and we will also make this this video available. And then Breanna, if I would ask one more favor of you, could you send me your PowerPoint presentation and I'll make that available to people as well?
Yes.
Okay, if you'll do that, we'll put that on our website as well.
Sure.
Okay.
Breanna, are you able to approach the schools like HISD? Are they open?
Yeah. So that is one of our primary vehicles for prevention, is doing work in schools. We do not yet have a relationship with HISD. It's proved to be very difficult. So we're really looking for connections.
I can imagine. Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's a great segue. I mean, if schools obviously are one of her primary targets, if you have a relationship with the school system, man, reach out to her, get them connected. That's the best way, quickest way we're going to solve this problem is before it ever starts. So.
Hey, Breanna, that's a small world. My wife is highly involved with, she's a PhD psychologist and been with HISD 23 years. So she's got to know the right parties and know them well. So if I'll get that PDF, PowerPoint from Jim, and I'll let her know, and I'll sing your praises again, and hopefully maybe she can open a door for you at HISD.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Feel free to share my contact info with her.
Okay.
I'd love that.
Okay, we'll do.
Thank you.
All right. So anybody else have any other issues or questions? Okay. Well, Breanna, again, thank you very much. Awesome job. Hopefully we can help spread the word a little bit more for you guys. If anyone has any ideas or topics or suggestions for us to continue to, network virtually, I think that we're unfortunately going to be stuck with virtual for the next couple of months at the least. So it's going to be, probably summer before we're able to get together in person. So any other ideas that you have to do something virtually, let us know. We want to continue to try to keep the group connected. We want to keep the group together. And obviously we need to be able to show value for doing that. So any ideas are greatly appreciated. Brooke has got a speaker lined up for our next Thursday morning breakfast, which will be, I think it's March 11th, if I remember correctly, second Thursday of the month. And I'll send out an invite to that as well. But encourage other people to participate. Hopefully you saw the quality of the speakers we have, and let's see if we can get more people to join in. They don't have to be members. Invite anybody you want to participate. It's a way for us to share in the community, but also to let the community know what BBA is doing and how they might be able to join us and be a part of this. So with that, I'll call our meeting to the end. And thank you again, Breanna, and everybody have a great day and a great week. And be safe out there in all this weather. No snow. See you guys.
Bye.